my name is Jose Belen, United States Army Field Artillery Combat Veteran, founder and CEO of Mission Zero, an organization dedicated to ending veteran suicide. This journey began in the spring of 2003. I was part of the initial invasion into Iraq with the 1st Armored Division, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Field Artillery. Our orders were to secure Baghdad, and so that's what we did. I arrived in theater at 20 years old. I left when I was 22. Within minutes of getting into Iraq, being a 50 cal gunner, my job is to provide the safety and security of my guys. Within minutes of going over the berm from Kuwait into Iraq, I encountered a group of children running in our direction, and it was at that time that I understood that all the training and everything mentally that I was taught, I had to apply, and that what that meant was if these children posed a threat, that I was to end their lives. And I don't know if you've ever seen an automatic 50 cal machine gun, but the rounds are about this big, and is it's a lot to process. That you're going to have to do what you have to do, and that's the moment that I changed forever. I try to tell people it's like turning into a werewolf on a full moon. You just never goes away. And so, get in there and immediately becoming that person. I was there for 14 consecutive months. I turned 21 and 22 there. I lost my best friend 2 days before Christmas in December 2003. I was the lead gunner for my platoon, my battery, Alpha Battery. On any major op, I was the guy that would essentially receive first contact, and so that's what I did. I did it proudly. I miss it. But that doesn't mean that I didn't survive situations that shouldn't be here. I'm a very faith-based man. And so experiencing all those things, turning 21, turning 22, losing your best friend. I was there for 14 consecutive months because I was one of the youngest guy in my firing battery. And the 2 weeks that soldiers are provided to throughout their deployment to go back home to was offered to me and taken away days before I was to go back home, because I was single and I had no dependents. So they would send such and such because his wife delivered the baby early, or he's got a wife and kids, whatever the situation. I always kind of was told, Belen next time, Belen next time. And so when you become, who you're supposed to be in combat, as a field artillery guy, our job is essentially to seek and destroy the enemy. We take out city blocks. I'll never know how many people we killed as a unit, myself. These very hands, I look at them from time to time and go back to that. And so being out there, I was essentially blood of all emotion. That's what, again, you're supposed to do. This is not a sob story. I miss every moment of combat. There was a conflict today, I'd be right there in the front lines. So this is all about awareness. So becoming that person that is essentially there to take lives and defend and free, start losing contact with who you were. You willingly give your life there happily. I wore a uniform, proudly, American flag on both sleeves, being a combat soldier, and it was okay if I died. I only asked to not suffer. And anytime I go back there, it's hard to know that that person is still, within me now. And so when it came time for me to go home, it gave me like a sliver of hope that maybe I can go back to civilian life, even for a little bit, to at least be able to grasp onto excitement again and all that. Unfortunately, the last time it came time for me to go home for those 2 weeks, there was a sergeant who I believe his wife just delivered their baby, and yet again they say, hey, Belen, unfortunately, we're going to have to let Sergeant such and such go in your place, but we're going to give him the chance to give it back to you, but that's his choice, and that's up to him. So we went to Sergeant such and such, and when he said no, he like broke the last little bit of like, make matters even worse, they tell you, unfortunately, man, you're not going home until we all go home. This was the last slot for you to go home. That was it. You know, I was his gunner on the way to the airport to buy out. Watched him fly off in his airplane. That was it. That's where the ice that still runs in my veins, you know, happened. I didn't care about anything. I volunteered for any op that I could. I loved it all. I didn't care if I got blown up. I didn't care. You live and breathe it. War, your spirit is born within you. You're given it and you embrace it. And so when it came time to leave Baghdad, I remember just crying because I found places within, and this is urban warfare, that reminded me of like neighborhoods back home, stuff like that. And because again, it's like you're grasping, like, fuck. I just remember, like, I didn't think there was like a world outside of Iraq. It was like, fuck, you know, this is where I'm either gonna, you know, live or die. It's like, I'm killing or I'm gonna get killed. It's like, you know, you go through that. So we got extended past the year mark. So once we got extended past the year mark, you know, it's like whatever, we ended up getting orders to redeploy back home in July of 2004. I remember the formation, the celebration, and I just stood there. I could care less. I had one tear. I never forget that. I was so detached. We were going home after all that. I survived. Everyone's hugging and shit. And I remember Sergeant, he's like, what's the matter with you? He's like, aren't you excited? And I just looked, I was like, yeah, man. And that's why you see me so laid back even to this day, in a sense. Went back to New York to be with my friends and family. They threw this big celebration. I could care less. I actually was upset that they were having me, you know, coming home. From there, went back to Germany, finished the rest of my enlistment. I was honorably discharged in 2005, in January of 05. Went back home, and at that time, you know, it's like taking a lion out of the jungle. It's like, well, what the hell am I gonna do here? You know, I'm a warmonger praying for war. You know, embraced taking lives if I had to. Embraced having my life taken. You know, that mentality. It's like doesn't fit here. So, you know, it was immediately known to me that there was something wrong, but, you know, you ignore it. But my family, caring as much as they do, urged me to go to the VA. The VA says, well, you know, fortunately after, you know, review of you know, the answers on this test and what you've told us, you have shell shock, also known as PTSD. What the hell that is, they explain it. here's a set limitations. You're going to not be able to sleep. You're going to be socially awkward. You may not this and that. And I remember the first time when I went to 4th of July for the first time, I had to leave. I had a panic attack because in warfare, when, things pop off, there are flashes of red, flashes of green, tracers everywhere. And I remember going to this 4th of July party and just they're blowing up M80s, and I had this panic attack, and my friend walked me to the car and I left. Combat vets, veterans with PTSD, or anyone with PTSD, because we know it's not exclusive to vets. Thoughts of ending your life are there, depression. There's all these things that you have to tuck in here, but sometimes it's too much and it comes out. Took the pills that they gave me, said, hey, these will make you sleep better. This will help you manage all that stuff, and you'll be okay. You got to go to therapy. And so being 23, you're like, all right, cool. These pills will work and I'll figure it out. And what the pills did to me, it accelerated those thoughts. It caused me to sleepwalk. It, made my depression worse. I remember losing my grandpa in July '07. And, they had just put me in a new regimen of pills before he died. And my depression was getting worse and worse. And once he died, I just remember a set combination of pills that have been given to me have caused me to, be driven closer to, pulling the trigger. The only difference is when you're not on the medicines, the pistol's here. The difference is, get on the medicine, the pistol's still here. The only difference is there's no safety anymore, and there's a trigger and your finger's on it. And that's essentially what these pills were doing. And so for the last 15 years, that's really been my life. I was flagged early on for suicidality throughout this time, which means that this veteran is at high risk of suicide with anything you give him. Even knowing that, in the fall of 2016, my wife and I went pleading yet again to the VA. If we're going to put him on something, we have to be very careful, because I would either be on the medicines because I need something to not get me to commit suicide, because without them, I'm still there. So there's like false hope every time, or use cannabis, because coming from a house of emotional and psychological abuse, at 12 years old, I started using cannabis because I pivoted to the street. So I understood, even back then, the healing behind it, what its potential was. The issue is, being from New York, you get caught with a couple grams, you're going to get slammed. I'm going to ruin everything I worked for with my military career. So it's always been, use cannabis, which heals you and helps you. Run the risk of, becoming a criminal, even though you're an honorable person and you follow the law. Can't do that because then I'll lose my job, and how am I going to eat? The disability I have isn't enough. Okay, let me go unmedicated, which is already a dead end, or let me go to the VA and get the pills and still pivot close to ending your life. So you're, within the confines of everything that's out there. So, and by the grace of God, throughout this journey, professionally, I excel. I was one of the #1 insurance professionals in corporate America. I'll be forever grateful to American International Group, AIG, Direct, for hiring me in November 2007. So by the grace of God, for the last 10 years, until I resigned February 2017, I was one of the #1 insurance professionals in corporate America, making $10,000, $20,000 a month, $250,000 house, $200,000 cars, beautiful wife, beautiful children, white picket fence. I'm a kid from the streets of New York, burglarizing houses at 12, who dreamed all these things, and I obtained them through hard work. I figured it out. But even with that, my pistol was always on my dresser. I worked from home on my desk. And suicide was always there. Even though at work, I would, be this, top seller, top producer, trips, around the country for this and that. But money can't buy you happiness. So I resigned from that position last year. My wife as well, she quit her job, and that's when Mission Zero was born. And that's when I was like, you know what? We're going to figure it out. I'm going to go speak somewhere, and Danielle and I are going to raise awareness on PTSD and end veteran suicide one day, because no one else is. Every 90 minutes, there's a veteran somewhere in America killing themselves every day. And in large part because of the pills, in large part because cannabis is still under prohibition. And a year ago today, I gave my first public speech in Orlando, Florida, at a Red Elephant speaking conference. Just threw myself out there and gave the speech that I've always dreamt of giving, and it's been to give hope to the hopeless and a voice to the voiceless. It made sure everyone in that audience understood veteran suicide, understood PTSD. I said, a quote that, is out there that everyone loves. I have PTSD, but PTSD doesn't have me. We shouldn't be ashamed to say we have PTSD. We need to erase the stigma, take the mask off of PTSD. And so by the time that speech was over, the room was standing, not a dry eye in the room, and that's the moment I knew this can never stop. And so from that speaking opportunity, I would take any speaking opportunity in Orlando. I remember at Southeast Cannabis Conference Expo in Fort Lauderdale, connected with Montel Williams. He's a veteran himself. Shared a warm embrace and some very personal words. A friendship that was forged that day, and to this day I'm proud to call him a friend and a brother. He gave me his word that he will help me. The mission matters. My wife and I matter, everything we're trying to do. He brought me up on stage with him, delivering a keynote speech. I had no idea he would do that.
Jose, where you at, Jose?
That's the first time I was really introduced to the mass media and a sea of people. When I came off the stage, people greeting and understanding how real this issue is. Support, I want to support you. Here's my card. Here's my card. If we can succeed in our mission without an interview, without being on TV, Danielle and I would do that in a heartbeat, because the mission's always first. And by the grace of God, you have, media outlets like yourself rallying behind Mission Zero. When you rally behind Mission Zero, you're rallying behind the veterans that this is all for, that are on my back. I'm just so, grateful. And then I meet a gentleman named Marvin Washington, Super Bowl champion with the Broncos, incredible activist. He pledges his complete support to Mission Zero and to the cause, and says, brother, I will do everything I can to stand behind you and help. I'm proud to call him a friend and a brother as well, because without, these people, these key players, this wouldn't be possible. Aside from, Mission Zero, we also are activists within the cannabis space. I'm a human rights activist, and with that, I take on causes that, directly affect, the livelihood of mankind. And we're at a point where our nation is crying. There's a lot of suffering, veteran suicide, 22 a day, which we know is more than that. A large part of that is because the three options that I gave you earlier, there's other ones, veterans, millions across America right now living the same three options. And sometimes with the nightmares, your family falling apart, you're jobless because everyone gave up on you. You know what? If this is what I have to wake up to for the rest of my life, and I'm only 35, I'm out of here. And that needs to stop. There needs to be compassionate access for veterans who are subject to imprisonment. the loss of their family, their children. For, you know, I know families who drive across state lines to get cannabis on the black market to treat their child who is epileptic, run the risk of getting caught with large quantities of cannabis for their suffering child. I mean, in what world is that okay? So that's why I decided to join the lawsuit that's suing Jeff Sessions to end cannabis prohibition. My good friend Marvin reached out last summer, again expressing his complete support of Mission Zero and veterans, generations past, present, and future. I accepted immediately. My wife and I discussed it, you know, and being that we'll never stop Mission Zero until zero, this was part of mission. And so currently we're suing Jeff Sessions in federal court. We're pending our appeal. So, you know, ending the journey, Mission Zero has come from every pitfall, every moment of pain, everything I have felt throughout this journey that led me to nearly end my life. But by the grace of God, I didn't. Figured out a way that let's use that pain as a vehicle to help change people's lives and save people's lives. So Danielle and I really, you know, we have like a 6-foot-long whiteboard that we got at Home Depot that's filled, you know, from one end to the other with all these different initiatives, because we know what wasn't there for us when we needed it. We know what needs to be there for those veterans who need it. Can't rely on others to do it. We need to do this by veterans, for veterans. And day by day, as we've, you know, continued to innovate, you know, we've been fortunate enough to grow. You know, it's taken pain, suffering. We've lost our home for this mission. Again, this is not a sob story. This is an awareness story that you can really do things in life, even if you're at a point where you want to end your own. We want to help give people reasons to live now. You know, our mantra is hope, giving veterans and those suffering happiness, opportunity, purpose, and empowerment. Because if we can do those 4 things and apply them in our daily living, and if we all share the same principle of paying things forward, the world can change, let alone ending veteran suicide. So we virtually have gone through this with no funding, and that's what we try to tell people. You can make a change in life. Don't focus on money. We had plenty of money, and it didn't. We don't have a tenth of what we had then, but we're richer in heart and spirit. And you know, these little meetups that we would do, you know, 1 or 2 people would show up, but it didn't matter. Those 1 or 2 people is why we were there.
Jose is here today because he's trying to learn, but he wants to give back. And give back by being in front of people, explaining his story.